Things are things are quite well. How are you feeling today?
Hanging in there.
All right. It's Monday, right? It's a Monday. It was good talking earlier.
I was coming off of a good weekend, so
My condolences.
showing the beautiful weather. We got to about 70 degrees up here, so
Pretty nice. Yeah, it was pretty nice in Queens too. I'm not gonna lie.
oh, we're in Queens.
Yeah, I live in Briarwood, right between Jamaica and Forest Hills. It's nice little.
Yeah, okay. I used to live in Flushing,
Okay, cool.
so I miss it so, to be perfectly honest with you.
I can't blame you. I went to school at Toro, so I know Flushing. It's
Okay.
yeah. Remind me, is Assembly Member Dinowitz going to be joining our call today?
So he's going to try to make it. He's finishing up something, but he did say he was going to try to make it. So we want to wait a couple of moments. Let me see where he is. Can you hold on one second?
Sure. And then for the rest of the team, while we wait, let's try and have a meeting sometime either later this week or next week, so we can start to just chat, keep the lines of communication open, see what we can do this legislative session, next legislative session. As I briefly mentioned during the event, there is a affirmative consent bill. I definitely would like to chat with you guys about as well, and like to get your input. I'm not sure.
Count us in, Chris.
One more time.
Count us in.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. And Lizzie and Casey, I did want to apologize because I had to leave the event.
No. You had a baby at home. That's what you told me. You're good. You're good.
All right. Appreciate it. Yeah, we just started potty training her, and that was and it was a rough week for my wife as it was. So I was like, I have to go, but I'm going to be for like a half an hour tops, and it worked out. It worked out. Baby's good. Wife's good.
We're very happy to have you come, even just for the few minutes you were there. It was a huge add to have you speak.
Great. Thank you.
So.
Appreciate
And
it.
Casey's always very gracious as she reminds me, you're creating a human.
Yeah. That's 100% true. Every single part of the human you are responsible for as parents. So
yeah.
The work doesn't stop. I'm lucky because I've been working with toddlers for the last 15 years. So at this point, a lot of the heavy lifting I've already done. It makes the job a little easier. Just a little easier. Doesn't help.
Lucky wife.
Yeah, she might argue otherwise, but
Once you're in a relationship, it's all for fair game, all partners.
Right. Oh man. So how did you guys come across this bill? What's your background on this?
It's all Lizzie.
I'm actually, Chris, I'm a Harvard lawyer.
Right.
And so I geek out on some of my journals late at night.
Okay.
And I just had something come across the Minnesota state case.
Right. Yeah.
That basically turned a rape into an unwanted touching misdemeanor. And I mean, I just basically didn't sleep that night and went to just fell into a black hole of research.
I get it. Oh, I get it. It's tricky. And I would say from what I've learned, pace yourself because you can make yourself sick doing the kind of research on this topic material. You can get sick.
I know. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I usually read this stuff to make me go to sleep.
Whoops.
I completely ended up just like at a loss. I was just fuming internally.
Yeah.
So, and my little guy had crawled into bed with me. So I'm like under the covers, just trying to read and doing my research. I was like, what is going on? And of course, the next day I was telling everybody that wanted to hear me, and everybody was replying, there is absolutely no way that that's correct.
Right. It seems nonsensical, but here we are.
Exactly.
Here we are. Christian, you're back.
Yes. So I did speak with the assemblyman. He's in conference with his colleagues right now. So as soon as they finish, she will be back up, and hopefully we'll still be talking. But unfortunately, they just they went into conference a short while ago. So I don't know how much they're going to be there for, but I mean, more than willing to talk with you folks and certainly try to, strategize a way that we can get, moving forward on this.
All right, well, might as well move forward. I do have a hard out at 5, everyone, because I do have to pick up my daughter. So Christian, I'll lay out the land right now. 3 things
Okay.
I want to discuss. I want to discuss basically the contentions that have been brought up to this bill. I want to discuss the language of the bill, and then I want to discuss public hearing. So, and as best as you can answer on behalf of Dinowitz, obviously, you're 2 different people. Do what you can, and we can always circle back to him if he joins us. But
Right.
But to start off with, I'm speaking with Frederick Klein. I've seen the interview as well with Chris Glorioso, and I've heard 2 specific different contentions to this bill. And I just want to see if those contentions still exist. And the first contention is that there is not enough of a consensus in the Committee on Codes. And the second contention is that concern that innocent people may go to prison the way the bill is worded. And I'll pause there to let you answer if that contention still exists or not.
I mean, I think the major, trepidation at this point is an uneven application of the law. Some of the language, surrounds judgment, right? So it says, the last line, expressing lack of consent, and such condition is known or reasonably should be known to a person in an actor situation. So, I mean, we can, look at it and say, okay, yes, we definitely know that that person does not have the ability to consent. But also there is a certain sense that, sometimes certain communities are targeted in these type of situations. Or target is not the right word. But certainly sometimes, the law is not applied evenly to certain communities. And so what's reasonable in one instance is not necessarily reasonable in another example. So I think, a lot of what we're looking at right now is certainly, how to fix that so that when we see it, we can actually point to it and have some actual, specifics as to what it is and not necessarily leave it so much up to judgment.
Now, when you say certain communities are targeted or more vulnerable,
Like I said, I misspoke on that.
Okay.
I shouldn't have used that.
okay. I guess my question is that I feel typically in a situation where there's a he said, she said, that there typically won't be enough evidence. So DA would most likely say there's no chance of conviction, so it wouldn't even go to trial, which for me means that it's not really a contentious issue because this law is protecting those in a situation where there is enough evidence. And I feel like those situations where it's just too much of a gray zone, unfortunately for the victim, a lot of times it's simply not going to go to trial. Whether it's the police filling out the report might say, we're not taking this case on, the detective might say we're not taking this case on, the DA, the judge arraignment, or the grand jury when they're looking to see if there's enough evidence. Between those 5 screens, I feel the odds of them taking a he said, she said case are just really minimal. I could be wrong, correct me, but if that's the concern, I don't see it.
I don't understand what
Well, you're all right. So the contention is that excuse me 1 second. You were saying that some people are more vulnerable to being prosecuted, right?
the application of the law.
Okay, so give me an example.
Right. So when you have ambiguous language, right? So there are instances where it can be used in one way against certain communities, and in others instances, it's not necessarily the case. Yeah.
Conference is still going on, but
Okay. The Assemblyman just returned, so he's going to be joining us in just a moment.
Okay.
So if you just kind of.
Can you flesh out an example for me of 2 different communities where it's utilized differently? Because I'm not quite following.
Well, I think, let him join on and then we can kind of proceed from there. I think is probably the most appropriate thing. And let me I'll be right back.
All right. What's going on? Oh, Stefan, I see your point. again, for everyone here, you are also welcome to ask questions, to make commentaries. So, if I'm not acknowledging you, say, wait, I have a thought, just signal me in any way you can. So I'd be like, hey, Casey want to say something, Lizzie wants to say something, etc. Because, they're open to that dialogue. Lizzie,
Yeah.
that issue that we discussed at the event,
Yeah.
I come across so much, and it frustrates me because of the gross in the gross application of justice on only one side, and it's just preventive as opposed to actually serving justice. I find often the issue stacked is what if versus a what is, and they will always lean towards, oh, we're afraid that the what if might happen, as opposed to recognizing this mountain of what is happening. And short answer, yes, it would seem so.
Yeah.
It would seem so. Oh, let's hope he comes soon, because I have 17 minutes. There we go. Okay.
All right, I think he's.
Here we are. Welcome, Assemblymember Dinowitz. How are you?
Hi.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We want to talk to you about Assembly Bill 5519A. Christian and I were just talking about the language and talking about contentions with the bill. I wanted to ask you as well. In the past, I've heard two contentions about the bill. One, that there might not be a consensus in the Committee on Codes, and two, the concern that language might lead to those innocent being arrested. To start first, do you still feel there's not a consensus to bring this bill forward to put to a vote in the Committee on Codes?
That is correct. I think I'd like to achieve a consensus. People have raised issues. I think we want to do two things at once. On the one hand, we want to, I don't want to say close a loophole, because it's not really a loophole. It's a situation where the DAs refuse to prosecute that which they could prosecute, but don't want to prosecute because they don't think they're going to win. But we'll call it a loophole just for the sake of this discussion. So we want to address that issue on the one hand, but on the other hand, we don't want to create a scenario where people are like not being treated fair, guilty until proven innocent. So the question is how to balance the two. Now, last year, our staff, who are probably more expert than I am on these issues concerning criminal procedure law and so on, advised that there should be a few, what I consider very minor amendments. We did do some language change, as you well know, on the bill. And I think people still do have concerns. I don't have any concerns because I want to pass the bill as is right now. But in order to pass the bill, I need to make sure we get everybody on board.
How do we best go about that?
I think it's always good to reach out to members, to legislators, assembly members, especially members of the committee. Right now, I'm looking at the people who are co-sponsors, and only two of them are actually members of the Codes Committee. So it wouldn't be a bad idea, and I've spoken to people as well. But the more people hear about this issue, the better. And I don't think it's really been out there that much. Last year, toward the end of session, there was a press conference, which I think kind of got some people really angry, if not because it looked like, well, I don't want to get into the details of that, but it kind of looked like one of the legislators there was attacking the members of our House, and that's not a good way to get things done. But that doesn't affect how I feel about the issue. I think this is an issue which, when it was brought to my attention, I felt very strong about, very angry about, and particularly angry because I think, DA Vance Manhattan, he was the one who, was using this as an excuse not to prosecute. The job of the DA is not to say, well, I think our odds of winning this case aren't that great, therefore we're not going to try to get justice for a victim. The job of the DA, in my opinion, is to try to get justice for the victim, period. And if they think it's only a 1 out of 5 chance, well, okay, roll the dice. If they think it's 0 chance, that's another story. But I think that the DA kind of really passed the buck on this. And I haven't heard other DAs speak on the issue, but I imagine they're acting, similarly without, saying, oh, we can't do anything because there's a loophole in the law. There's no loophole in the law, but we can still make the law tougher to make sure that they can't say that there's a loophole in the law.
That's fair. Now, you said that there's a way to get more consensus. Have you already sent a bill memo of support?
Well, there is a bill memo of support out there that goes along with the bill. In addition, we have brought the bill to the attention of people, the bill, but I think it's, it takes more than that. Don't forget, everybody's attention is divided 100 different ways on a lot of different issues. Until recently, we were focusing on the budget. So, people have their own pet issues or primary issues that they're focusing on. And I don't think that's the case here. I don't think, people are looking at, legislation that we've discussed that didn't make the budget, whether it's mayoral control or you name it. Everybody has their priorities, but I think it's important, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that more people think of this bill as a priority. And I could recirculate a memo to my colleagues on the bill, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right now there is 6. Actually, there's 4 members of the code screening. We got 16 names on here. I think we can do better than 16 names.
Yeah, I agree. So I want to talk about the language quickly.
Okay.
So let me see if I can get screen sharing real quick. If I can't, we'll live without it. Bear with me, folks. Okay. So when we look at the original bill and the Senate version, we added the language extreme when the victim is under the influence of any drug. This part's more or less the same. You remove the word temporary and appraising, and then included incapable of clearly expressing a lack of consent. I'm curious as to, was it that you felt these words, temporary and appraising, were weak words, or did you feel that that wouldn't have led to a consensus?
I was advised by counsel to the committee to use this language. I had met with, he's no longer works for us, Marty Rosenbaum, but I had met with him and I said, I really want to get this bill passed. And what can we do to make that more likely? And so he came up with these few changes, and there were just a few, I think, which he indicated, in his opinion, would strengthen my hand in trying to get this done. So that's why we put these changes in, because I want to get something done.
Right. Where we are right now, however, the Senate and the Assembly versions have different language. So what's the middle ground? What's the compromise so that your bill and Biaggi's bill can be in that middle ground? Does she need to change her language to yours? Is there some way that you can change and she writes a new bill and you meet in the middle?
Well, I don't know that when you say middle ground, I don't think that these bills are so different than each other, but the language is different. I am not wedded to any particular language. I'm wedded to the idea of getting something done, but I also need to have the backing of the experts, on staff, or else it's just not going to happen. And so the changes that we put in were based upon that. I'm not saying, it's my way or the highway. I said the wording to me, there's nothing so great about our wording. If Biaggi changed her bill to match ours, I'd still have to work to get it passed in the Assembly. Listen, the Senate, and good for them, but they don't go through the same process we do in getting bills passed. They can they can have a bill that goes from being written, go through their process in a day. You know, we have a committee system, which is a little more, it's different than theirs. It's different. It's more, there's a lot of vetting that goes on. So I'm not making excuses for myself or anybody else, but it's generally a little more difficult to get these things through, especially when it comes to criminal justice stuff. And keep in mind that there are people in the, you know, on the defense side of things, and they certainly are very loud and active, as they should be, on issues that have a different opinion of this bill than you or I might have.
All right, and I was like stressing the precedent, right? So when we look at other states, in South Carolina, you know, they use similar language. The actor knows or has reason to know the victim is mentally incapacitated, rendered temporarily incapable of appraising or controlling his or her conduct. And this is already passed. This is standing law. We look at Arkansas, which overall ranks 44 out of 50 in the country and 48th out of crime corrections. They use the language temporary incapable of, of appreciating or controlling the person's conduct as influence, conduct as a result of the influence of a controlled or intoxicating substance. And in Maryland, they use language with mentally or physically incapacitated person, whether they're drunk, high, or unconscious. So we see in different states that there is precedent for this kind of language to be used. The condition was known or reason should have been known. So it stands to reason that we can do the same thing in New York. We can pass a bill in New York if 14 other states currently have this bill or have this. They've made this recognition. But you know, as you talk to your people, as you talk to your colleagues, please remind them that 14 of the states have already accomplished this. There hasn't been a spike in crime. When California passed this 5 years ago, although people did report more rape, the actual rate of arrest was lower. It didn't lead to some sort of system collapse. You know, it just allows those who are vulnerable in this position to be afforded greater justice and opportunities for justice. But I don't want to take too much time on this. I just want to make that point. I do want to finish with the concept of a public hearing for this bill. You know, and I'd like for us to set a definitive date. And I'm going to turn to Stefan Turkheimer of RAIN, who's here to join us. And I apologize, I didn't introduce anyone else to you. We have Kelly Weigel from Cure Collective, Casey Colbert from Cure Collective, as well as Lizzie Ashford. Is that correct? From Cure Collective here as well.
What is Cure Collective? I don't know what it is.
It's a nonprofit, Assemblyman Dinowitz, that is focused on a women's initiative. And we are specifically targeting this issue. We held an event in Manhattan last week. And as a result, we have also started a petition. And in that short time, we have almost 1,000 signatories supporting Senator Biaggi's legislation. So to your point of raising the awareness of this issue, of the voters not being aware, we are trying to fill the gap on that and making sure that this issue is addressed. That victims are allowed to have their justice and day in court.
Okay, and you know, there's another, I guess, issue which I assume you're aware of, and that is that in this country, there's a long history of, and it's largely based on race, frankly, of people being accused of rape. Usually it's a white woman accusing a black man of rape. So some people have raised the concern that they don't want to create a scenario, and I don't think this bill does that, by the way, but they don't want to create a scenario where such, where that's more easily happening. So we have to be mindful of that kind of bad history that's been experienced in the country. So the question is, can we find a way to address the issue, which I think is a serious issue, without feeding into that fear that there'll be some people who are falsely accused and will have less of an opportunity to defend themselves.
Absolutely.
I think this bill strikes a good balance myself, but you can understand the concern that may be out there.
I can understand the concern, being a black man myself.
Right.
I would say that I'm a numbers guy, right? I have to do data analysis. I work with kids with autism. If we can't prove that the therapy we're doing with the kids is working through the numbers, it's just hearsay. I look at laws the same way, and I know I'm not in your shoes, I'm not a lawyer, I just care. And so you have 14 states that you can do an analysis based on. You have 14 states right now. Some states include California, Arizona, North Carolina, Maryland, Arkansas, Georgia, that you can look to see, has there been an increase in the arrests of Black men for sexual assault against white women? If there's no data to support that, then that's a fear. And my concern is that justice is not being served because of a fear of a what if, and the actuality of what is being ignored and it's being negated. I understand Blackstone's formula. It's better for 10 guilty men to go free than 1 innocent to go to jail. But as a numbers guy, I wonder if you expand that out, at what point does it get ludicrous? On college campuses, the Journal of Violence Against Women found that 46% of rapists on college commit 10 or more in their time in school. So if 10 guilty men go free, they're harming 100 people to preserve 1 person who might go to jail. And again, you expand it out to 10,000 guilty people, 100,000 people. At what point do you have to move the wheels of justice so that all those people who are being harmed are better protected? But again, I am short on time, and I did want Stefan to talk about the public hearing. And again, I thank you guys for all making time for this today.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. My name is Stefan Turkheimer. I'm with RAIN. We're the largest anti-sexual violence org in the nation. This is thank you so much for your support for this bill, and I'm really glad that you're bringing it forward in the Assembly. We work on issues of incapacitation across the country, and this bill is important to us. When we're doing our bill review and we're deciding whether to support something, we've never seen this section that requires a lack of an ability to voice and a refusal to consent. We think that that's actually already in the incapacity definition. And so when you're putting an additional element in there, as a former prosecutor, you're putting an additional burden on the prosecution to prove that. When you're a jury member, you're starting to look at, they have to check all those boxes, and that has to be separate from the incapacity when you add an additional definition. And we think that it's already in the incapacity, and the prosecutor shouldn't have to prove more than the incapacity. So that's just something that worries us. But our main concern is that this gets a up or down hearing. Do you know when that would be available, assuming you feel that there's support on the committee?
I don't know when there might be a hearing. I mean, we have hundreds of bills in our committee. Some are more important than others. This one is more important to me, certainly, than probably almost any bill, if not any bill. So we don't ordinarily have a hearing on every bill that's in the committee. If a hearing would serve a useful purpose, I would want to see a hearing, but I'm already convinced on the bill. My job is to try to help convince other people to support it. So right now, I think my main concern is making sure that my colleagues are knowledgeable on the issue, knowledgeable on the legislation, and see if we can't get more co-sponsors to sign on to the bill.
Help me with the timeline here. I mean, there's only, 4 weeks left in session?
Including this week, there are 6 weeks left in session, so time is very short. And if it doesn't pass this year, you'll need to get a new sponsor in the Senate next year, because Senator Biaggi is running for another office. But I don't think that in and of itself is a problem. I think the question is, can we get it done this year? Forgetting about who the state senator is or who the assemblyman is, for that matter. So my goal would be to try to get this done and without delay. And can I succeed? I'll find out soon enough. But yeah, after this week, we have 5 weeks left.
What's the date on which you think you could get a up or down vote?
On the assembly floor?
No, I'm sorry, in codes.
I can't answer that, because I don't alone make all the decisions in terms of the agenda, in the sense that I work with staff and leadership to determine what bills will go forward and what bills have a chance of having the support. First and foremost, we have to be convinced that there's support for the bill. And just because I like the bill doesn't mean that everybody else likes it. They may, but that's not a guarantee. So I can't give you a timeline on this or any other bill for that matter.
Assemblyman Dinowitz, I know
Yes.
that this legislation that you speak about being so supportive, you've been behind it for more than a couple of years now. And at this point, if you're still saying that your colleagues need to be better informed in order to muster support, do you not think that a committee hearing and bringing forward experts, information that could help educate them and highlight the issue would serve to fulfill exactly what you're saying you want to fulfill, which is gather their support, get an up and down vote, pass Senator Biaggi's legislation as it is, even without the amendments that you have proposed?
Well, when I'm
With-
passing, right now, the only legislation before us is Assemblyman Dinowitz's legislation, just so you know, which is very similar to Senator Biaggi's legislation.
Right, but even that legislation you've not put forward in the committee, so
There's a
I'm,
lot of bills I haven't put forward in the committee. We try to operate by consensus. If I can achieve a consensus, simply because the bill hasn't been put on an agenda doesn't mean I'm not for my own bill, as was implied by some people last year. That's just not the case. I'm doing everything I can to make this happen. And the hearing to me is not the main issue. The main issue is getting enough people on board with it. I've got a number of people to sign on to the bill. I'd like to get more. I'd like to hear other assembly members, especially members of the committee, because ultimately they're the first line of who votes on it, to support the bill.
so what do just, for example, Keurig could do to help you, have an easier path forward? My assumption was that as a committee head, you had a vast amount of leeway in setting agenda and bringing forward
Well,
bill. But as you're saying, you like to work via consensus. So how could we help you reach that consensus?
Well, I do have leeway, but we don't have a dictatorship. So if we had a situation where individuals like me can make an absolute decision on everything, then we wouldn't need the rest of the committee members or the rest of the assembly members either. But we have a democracy, so we work together. Yes, I do like to operate by consensus because I feel that's the way to get things done. But that means getting enough backing from colleagues for the legislation. It also means putting it on their agenda. What can you do? I think a good thing you can do is to reach out to members, particularly members of the majority on the codes committee. There's I think there's 16 members of the committee in the majority side. Those are the key people whose support will be extremely helpful if we want to move this thing ahead. And as I said, time is running short. I've had numerous meetings with council and staff on the legislation, and I'm going to continue to push best as I can.
So just a quick question on that. I'm sorry. I
Go
do want
on.
to get from you a sense of if we're going to work the committee and we're going to figure out where the yes votes are and all that. Obviously this dies if it's not brought forward, right, in the next few weeks.
Well, I don't. Maybe that's the way you would look at it. It's not so many years ago, I put forth the first bill in the state of New York dealing with the issue of human trafficking. Until then, there wasn't even a definition in the law as to what human trafficking was. I thought it was like a no-brainer that we can pass this bill like that. It actually took about, I think, 3 years or more to achieve the support we needed within the assembly and between the assembly and the Senate, and then of course the governor. Some things just take time. Some things happen very quickly, I'll admit, but some things that seem really, really important take time, more than we like. And I'm not trying to make excuses here, but I'm just telling you that's the reality. When we got that bill signed, and this goes back, I think, 2007. I introduced the bill in 2004, so it was going on in 4 different sessions. So this is not a new bill anymore. I'm doing the best I can, but as I said, if only I were king and I could snap my fingers and things would happen exactly the way I want it all the time, that would be great, but it's not like that. And there are interests out there that don't want the bill also, as you can imagine.
I'm assuming you're referring to the defense attorneys. Would that be like the largest,
I would think
impediment?
so, yeah. I think there are a lot of people on the defense bar that don't think, think that this concept is would be violative of some people's rights. And I don't believe that's the case. I think if we word things properly, we can accomplish our goal without doing that. But not everybody thinks that this bill is a great idea the way all of us do.
So I hear your point about how, the inefficiencies and delays inherent in democracy. I would like to see something happen this term if possible. Otherwise, you're right, it's not the end of the game, but we would have to have new bills and do the entire thing there.
Yes.
I'd like to see a possibility to have a date certain from you to give some idea of what we can push on other members of the committee on to get them to take a position. A lot of times, if something's not actually on their event horizon, they're not willing to kind of make a public statement on it. I'm not worried about that, but it would be very helpful if we're going to move this bill to provide that.
Well, the only date certain I can give you is that the last scheduled date of session is June 2nd. So whatever we do or don't do has to be done before then. As I said, we have 5 weeks left after this, so the clock is really ticking really quickly. And I will tell you this, whatever it's worth, I don't have data, but I'm pretty sure at least half the bills that we pass during the session tend to get passed during the last 2 weeks. So I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but that's the reality. Most of the stuff we do, besides the budget, happens during the end of session.
Okay, so we have 4 members, 4 co-sponsors on the committee right now.
Let me just double, plus myself.
We're going to count you twice. Is that all right?
Count me 3 times. Dinowitz, Seawright, Weprin, Hevesy, Rosenthal, and then one of the members of the committee recently resigned to become the ambassador to Jamaica. So 5 of the committee members are already co-sponsors of the bill.
Okay, and you need to see what, 9 out of the 16?
No, we need to. There's also Republicans. We need 12 votes to pass a bill in committee.
No, I'm just saying in terms of your thought process, in terms of bringing it forward. 12.
We need 12.
Got you.
At least 12. Right. Have I got my numbers right, Christian? There's 16 Democrats and 5 Republicans.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
That's 21, so majority is 12.
Okay. 12. All right. And so if we get 12 on it, you'll bring it up at the next meeting, you think?
If we get 12 on it, it'll strengthen my hand in getting it on an agenda. I'll just leave it that way. I put together an agenda, but there are other, sometimes a bill that I put on the agenda doesn't quite end up on the agenda. Usually it does. So we'll see. I know you're trying to get a very hard and fast commitment out of me, but I can't give you what you want. But I'm telling you that I'm going to do my best. And I'm telling you that if I had 12 committee members who are very strongly for the bill, that would be a real big help. And I will continue to talk to committee members. Most of them are busy pushing their own bills.
Understood. Okay.
All right, Assembly Member, we hope that you'll do unlike the DAs and push a bill forward, even if you're not sure you'll win. Because I know that's an issue that you have with the DAs. So I hope that you.
You know what? I never give up.
Right.
I never back down. I try to get things done. And the only way to get things done is to keep fighting. Some things, as I said, with the human trafficking law, it took several years, but we got it done eventually. So I'm not a quitter.
Oh, neither are we. We will we'll start back in a couple of weeks before, obviously before June 2nd to chat again. Thank you for making the time. Unfortunately, I have to go, folks. Again, Stefan, Kelly, Casey, Lizzie and Mercedes, thank you so much for joining me. Christian, thank you for facilitating. Assemblyman Member Dinowitz, it's always a pleasure to see you.
Okay, have a good day, everybody.
Take care.
Oh, man. Let me stop recording before I say anything.